So, 2 nights ago, or maybe it was 3 nights ago, I haven't had a chance to record until now, I went with my friend to go see the third Madoka movie in theaters. And I figured I would do a quick kind of overview, impressions video, something like that. Nothing scripted, which is why I hope I don't mumble too much and lots of ums and such. But I have a couple notes here to keep me on track, because there are a couple things I want to touch on and all that stuff. But I'll do a full, legitimate review, as the intro said, when the disc release comes out, in like 10 years. Anyways, the first thing I wanted to say was that if you have not already seen the movie, because I know that there is a cam rip version out that you can watch now if you look hard enough, or even though it's really not that hard to find. I wanted to say, if you haven't seen it yet, don't do it. For a cam rip, the quality isn't bad. It looks pretty nice, but it's just not the same as seeing it in theaters, if anything, because the camera and the fucking camera is at an angle, so it cuts off the top left of the screen, which really annoyed me because I watched it after I saw it in theaters, and I was like, why can't I see this corner of the screen? But yeah, if you're really, really, really impatient for the movie, it's not that bad a cam rip. I'm just saying that I think it's worthwhile for the first watching experience of the movie to wait until you either see it in theaters or the disc release comes out, and then that is out to see. The other thing I wanted to say is, if you have seen the movie, don't put spoilers in the comments. This comment section is not an area to talk with me about the movie if you have seen it, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone else. If you spoil anything in the comments, I'm gonna remove it. Nothing against you, maybe, but I just don't want anyone else to get spoiled. Anyways, moving on to actual points about the movie, though, the first thing I have to say, which is very weird coming from me, is that the animation was fucking amazing. I normally, if you know me, don't care much for animation, usually, because typically animation is just, get character from point A to point B, or have character do thing to character B, say things to them, they're talking. It's usually very simple. I mean, it's always animated differently. They always look different, because different animation studios, different animators, and that stuff. But Shaft is such a visual studio. They like to fuck with the visuals so much that it actually adds to the tone of what's going on. Instead of literally just showing something happen, they'll make it some kind of extravagant, giant thing that's... I have to be vague as possible here, because I can't spoil anything, but they fuck with the scenery of the scene in unusual ways that still add to the scene. It's just that they're so creative, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. They're just such creative animators that it adds to the scenes so well. The opening was also fucking amazing. I mean, I liked the song too, but the animation for the opening was what nailed the tone it had. Again, I'm not going to give details, but if you've seen the opening, you know what I'm talking about. That tone they had for that opening was brilliant, especially considering what happens in the rest of the movie. Other things I can say about it is that it's a logical progression of the story, which is good. It's not some random tack on. It makes sense. There was only so many places they could go with Madoka after the series ended. There's not much there, really. I mean, there kind of is, but their options were kind of limited. And what they decided to focus on for this movie made sense in a logical progression kind of sense. Again, I'd like to be more specific, but I'm trying to be as vague as possible here. Another thing I could mention is that, personally, I think the ending was perfect, because it ended on a note where they could either do more movies and seasons if they wanted to, or they could just straight up stop right where they are right now, and I would be perfectly fine with it. So they have an ending where I'm fine with it continuing, or fine with it just stopping there. That's pretty impressive. I mean, I can understand it's not for everyone. Not everyone will hold the same opinion I do when they see it, or if they have already seen it. But for me, I thought it was perfect. It'll be perfect either way, which really bumps it up for me. Also, if you're someone who's worried, because if you've seen the news posts up until the movie, coming out, you've noticed that they keep mentioning and sort of advertising that there's this new character in the movie that they're working with or whatever, and you may have thought, well, who is this new character? Why should I care? Are they going to take away from the other characters? And I can tell you right now that they don't. She's actually a nice addition to the cast. They focus on... She doesn't take up a huge amount of time, so everyone else still gets the screen time that they need and all that stuff. She doesn't take away from the main cast at all, but she still has enough time that you can come to like her. Like, she's a fun character. I liked her. If anything, I could say that they actually didn't focus on her enough, because of not enough... I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm mumbling. God damn it. I'm trying to say that she could have used more time, if anything. I feel like they could have focused on her some more without still taking away from anyone else. I feel like they just kind of shorthanded her just a little. That and her explanation for being in the movie in the first place is still a little sketchy. I feel like they could have done a little better with that. If at all, I don't know. Oh, and another thing I should have mentioned actually a little earlier is that the music was really well done in the movie. On a normal standard, too. I mean, it was, good music, but on a different kind of perspective, I don't really remember, like, the first 30 minutes of the movie. I wasn't really paying that much attention to the music. It was just BGM, and I wasn't really paying, like, a primary attention to it. But around 30 minutes into the movie, I was noticing it a bit more, was that the way the music is done is, like, it kind of hits on two different areas in a way. It fits the tone of whatever's happening in the scene, but there's also this kind of underlying weirdness to it, that something isn't really quite right, which was fucking perfect for the movie, considering what goes on. But it's like, for example, like something, everyone's kind of just, around and talking and, just happy being around each other. And so the music would, it would have the notes. It'd be like, yeah, this is, happy stuff going on. Well, not necessarily happy. It's complacent. I don't know. It's a good atmosphere right now. It's nothing really bad is happening. But there's this underlying tone to the music where it's like, yeah, it's nice right now, but something doesn't feel right. And the music nailed that perfectly. Like I said, I wasn't paying too much attention to the first 30 minutes, so it may actually not have had that. If anything, I actually hope it didn't, because that means it would have built up over time, which would have fit even more. But while I have a lot of positive things I can say about the movie, there are a couple things I want to touch on that I wasn't too big a fan of. For one, the pacing wasn't that great. However, I've never really had... what's the word I'm looking for? A good relationship with the movie format. I've always found movie formats to be very limiting for shows, because typically a lot of anime are so ambitious that in the movie format they just don't have enough time to say what they want to say or do what they want to do. And so it causes them to either cut out content, which causes things to feel rushed, or they just can't place things well enough as in an episodic format with, a clear and cut 20 minutes or so every week. And so they know how to pace the story like that. With a movie, it's just a straight up, hour to 2 hours or so. That's usually how long they are. Anime movies, at least. And that hit this one as well. The pacing was, I think, maybe it was slow at the start. I think it was actually okay pacing at the start. But it gets to a point where the pacing just kind of seems to speed up and doesn't really slow down until maybe the very end. It's just kind of like, oh, things are happening, and then bam, 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 bam. Like, not really twists or revelations necessarily, but just things are happening, things are coming into play, and it's all happening so quickly that it just didn't fit the pacing that the rest of the movie had up until that point. It's not that big of a deal, though. It wasn't like a deal breaker or anything. It was very noticeable. However, I think my biggest problem, and I have to be as vague about this as possible, because it revolves around, like, the biggest thing in the movie, is that it wasn't really that well explained. It was kind of a Deus Ex Machina. I think there's actually a more appropriate term I could use for what I thought of the scene, of it not being explained as well, but it's a little more descriptive than Deus Ex Machina, and I don't want to use it because it could spoil what the scene is about, I guess I could say. And like I said, I'm trying to be as vague as possible. So for now, I'm going to stick with Deus Ex Machina. And I think that was my biggest problem, because everything up until that point made sense, and it was a logical progression, and it was well explained. Some were maybe a little bit of a stretch, but it still made sense for the most part. And then this part happened, and it was kind of like, well, that kind of came out of nowhere. Well, not everything about it came out of nowhere, but just the event happening itself kind of came out of nowhere. But those are really the only negatives I could really say about the movie. I'd say it was actually a pretty fucking great movie. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but, you know, when you follow up on something like Madoka, which has such a huge impact for what it was trying to do, and I don't know if it was really trying to say anything, but I guess for what it was trying to say, it's not the same. It doesn't have the same impact that Madoka did. Madoka was very, I don't want to use the word unique, but it had a very specific purpose, and it did that very well. And the movie doesn't really have a specific purpose in mind. It's not its own solo thing. It's a sequel. It's just continuing on in a logical progression with the story of what they could do. And in that sense, it did what it was supposed to do. It just won't have the same kind of impact that the original did. And that's fine. It doesn't have to. It just has to be an okay sequel. And it was a pretty good sequel. The progression of what happens in this movie makes sense. And I know that I've seen other impression videos already of the movie. And because obviously, as everyone knows, if the movie doesn't make sense to you, it's clearly the movie's fault and not yours for not paying enough attention. I know because of this, there are people that are confused and not sure about things that happen in the movie, but all I can say is that pay the fuck attention, because it made perfect sense to me. Like I said, there is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina part that's kind of ridiculous, but everything else makes sense. And if people are complaining about what I think they're complaining about, yeah, they're not paying attention. All I'll say is that if you pay the fuck attention, it's just funny, because you have people complain. It's always funny. This is a continuous thing. When a reviewer complains that a show or a movie has too much exposition, and then later on say that they couldn't understand what was happening, you think there might just be a correlation there. Oh man, this dialogue sucks and it's boring. Wait, what the fuck's happening? Well, gee, maybe if you paid the fuck attention to this exposition, it would make sense. Okay, I'm ranting now, I should stop. I'll just say, for those of you who have not seen the movie, there's a very specific technique that you can use in animation that's very, very helpful. Typically, when characters are talking, I mean, with a visual studio like Shaft, there's always stuff going on in the background when characters are talking, pretty much. But the more blatant and into the front of the camera, well, fictional camera, it is, you know, the animation is when characters are talking, you think maybe it's just trying to tell you that what they're talking about could be kind of important. There are specific scenes that you need to pay attention to and remember in this movie. I will say that much. Ultimately, though, you know, I'm sure I rag on them, but I'm sure not everyone's gonna like the movie. You know, nothing's ever unanimous. But all I'm saying is I've seen people see these other impression videos and be like, oh, well, it's shit then, I'm not gonna watch it. Please, don't take these people you know, just their word value or whatever. Actually watch the movie for yourself and decide. And I know that may sound hypocritical, I can totally talk today. That may sound hypocritical because I am one of those people, and I just have a different opinion about it. But it still applies. I'm not saying that I'm right and that the movie's great. I'm just saying, watch the fucking movie yourself and decide. As I keep saying, especially in Q&A videos, watch it yourself, make your own opinion, and then decide from there with other people that, you know, other critics and such. You know? I mean, critics can sway your opinion and such, but you should really have, you know, kind of your own opinion to stand on from the forefront. Don't let us tell you what to think. We're simply here to either back up your opinion or challenge your opinion and make you think, things like that. We're not here to tell you what to think, just to make you think. Anyways, that was a random tangent, and this is going on longer than it needs to, so I'm just going to end it here. I thought it was a great movie. Wait for the disc release if you can, if you're patient. If not, cam rip's not that bad, but again, I highly suggest waiting for the disc release or a theater showing. And enjoy some Madoka. I'll be back for this topic when the disc release comes out for a full-fledged, spoilers-free game review.